this is Green Tag, Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip. Obviously, you've heard Scott. Scott is here joining me as always, every week to discuss the top theme park news and why it matters to you. This week, we're going to be looking at some of the stories that we missed from the previous week because last week we covered the big IAAPA Expo Asia, and that was a kind of a special episode. We dug into that, so we missed news last week, which we're going to catch up on this week. Plus, Scott and I have both been traveling, clearly, and we have been a little bit, in the weeds working and not as much, in the clouds thinking. So we're just going to...
Which is a much nicer way of saying we've been bleary-eyed and stupid for the last couple of weeks. So, so anyway, this is our catch-up episode, and it'll be kind of a patchwork. So that'll be cool.
So as I mentioned, I was traveling. I was at the Midwest Haunters Convention, which apparently broke records this year for the most attended of the show to date. Last year was the previous record holder, so it seems to have been going on an uptrend, which I think is an interesting backdrop to understanding that it is June and this is the Chicago area. And the Chicago area, I think we have in Los Angeles, we have Midsummer Scream. And I think that people kind of accept that the SoCal culture is very open to Halloween and spooky and year round, blah, blah, blah. But this is Chicago. It's a different market. It's a different thing. And I think it's encouraging to all of us that it has such a big turnout. And in speaking with the vendors and the other, industry folks there, it seems like the majority of the people were kind of split. So they think, about 50% or more were people that really were just locals that almost just walked in, to see Halloween decorations and kind of, do stuff. So not haunters at all, which I think is all encouraging. And it gives us a backdrop to our first big news story, which is from Universal. Universal might be trying to tap in maybe to this market. We'll see, because they announced their first ever Halloween Horror Nights Premium Scream Night, which happens on August 29th. And you can read the news article, but just to break it down very briefly, what it is this is the night before opening. So it's August 29th. It's a Thursday. It is $350 marketed online. And basically what it includes is a limited entry, so they're going to limit the attendees so that it's less crowds, but you get to experience the entire event, the 10 haunted houses, the 5 scare zones, and then you get all you can care to enjoy selection of specific items that are, menu items for the event. So to me, it sounds like they took the RIP tour and they took out the guided portion and instead limited the amount of people in the park overall. And they just said, here, we're going to let you have this. There are some talk about the logistics. We don't know what it's going to be like, obviously, yet, but they're talking about doing staggered times. So not all the houses will be open the entire night. Some will be only open for certain hours. And of course, when I hear that, I think that means you're moving actors from house to house so you can run less of a staff.
I'm going to guess even, I'm going to be even more, not even nefarious. I'm going to be even more speculative here. Because I think all they've done is they've monetized their dress rehearsal. I don't think they're necessarily moving actors from house to house. I'm going to say they're moving directors from house to house. They're moving staff. They're moving senior staff or senior leadership from house to house so that they can actually get beta test or see what it looks like with an audience. Because let's face it, with any haunted attraction, and I'm sorry if you've ever worked with me before, you've heard me say this, but any haunted attraction is not complete until it gets its final cast member, and that is the audience.
Yep.
So the guests who walk through. So my guess is they have found a way to monetize their dress rehearsal, which is, when you've got a brand like Halloween Horror Nights that people are, it has such an avid fan base, just like you were saying about Midwest. When there's so many people who are eager to experience Halloween, why not? Why not charge the money for it? Now, are people going to be disappointed? We don't know that. I don't think, even if they are, I don't think they'll say anything simply because they did get to be the first to see it. And we know how many people want that to happen. They are chomping at the bit. I also think it's setting them up for some heavy duty return visitation, because they can say, well, we saw this just before it opened. And so when we go back in 3 weeks, we'll see how it's changed. We know haunt fans. We know the haunt fanboys and fangirls. And that's one of the situations where they can say, yeah, we saw it and it's so much better now. Yeah. Or, gosh, why did they change that? Or they move that vase from that table to that table. You know how crazy they can be.
Yeah.
So I think it's just playing into the fan base. I think it is, since it is only one night, it's one of those, they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And even if they sell 8 tickets, which I know is not going to be the case, it's going to sell out. But it's just additional revenue. So it makes sense to me. The price seems a little stiff, but then we were talking before we started recording that it's roughly comparable to the RIP tour plus the ticket, and the only thing they take out is the tour guide.
Well, that's exactly it. The pricing to me, because for an RIP tour, you do get walked, you get guided. Yeah, you still have a line, but for the most part, the RIP tours stagger. So like, really, I mean, you don't wait that long because they're staggered. They alternate which houses they go to, and they take you in an order. So to me, it's like, what do they mean by reduced crowds? And, I guess we'll see. We'll end up seeing, like, because if you end up waiting 30 minutes for each house, I would not say that's worth it, because then you've spent 5 hours, 6 hours in line, and you paid much more. I don't know. I also agree with you. It's definitely monetizing a dress rehearsal, because I believe this is their friends and family night. And so I'm wondering, are you going to be there with all the friends and family? And then they're also trying to sell, additional capacity. I don't know why they chose that amount for the price, because to me, you could have, because a regular ticket is $80 or in that range, right? So, or sometimes less on sale or whatever. So you're talking, I don't even know, like 4 to 5 times the cost to just show up one night and get a little bit extra food. That is, I don't know. I guess we'll see, right? What happens with this event will tell us all.
And last year they test marketed the culinary preview, basically.
Yeah. So last year that was 160, and all it was eating for 2 hours, right? But they didn't sell it very well. Clearly, that didn't work, and they changed the price halfway through, and they had to refund a bunch of people differences, and some people didn't get refunded and didn't get alerted that the price had been changed. And so it was a mess. Like, that was a mess last year. And this is already proving to be a mess a little bit, because on social media, they've been advertising it as 325, but the website is 350. So not a great start.
Yeah, I think the important thing to recognize here, though, is on a positive side, whether it turns into a cluster or not. On a positive side, the fact that it is the end of the last weekend of August, and they're celebrating, and they're starting their Halloween event then. So there's clearly a demand, and I think I know that, like, for example, Busch Gardens Howl-O-Scream in Tampa is starting their September, I believe it's September 6th or 7th.
Yeah.
So it's early. It's 31 days. That's more than twice what we used to do back when 10 years ago when I was there. So it is continuing to expand. The popularity for Halloween is continuing to expand. I think we're getting closer and closer to the point where eventually there will be a theme park that is nothing but horror based and open year round. I think we're getting there. Because we're proving that the market is there. We're proving that just to get in first, or this may or may not prove that, I guess, depending on its success, just to get in first is worth 3 to 5 times what you'd pay on a normal basis.
Yeah.
So
I think there are some takeaways for the audience. I agree with those. I'm not sure about how soon we'd see the year-round horror. Obviously Universal's working on that in Vegas, so we don't know what it's going to actually be like when it opens. But I would say, for takeaways for people listening, like, we have said this, but this just reinforces how stuff is creeping into August. And with Mickey's Not So Scary starting on August 9th this year, that's really, we're trying to make it 3 months. And if the theme parks can anchor Halloween to August, September, and October, that gives all of the smaller independent people a little bit of ammunition to maybe try and creep up earlier, or at least Saturdays or high demand days, or really look at your schedule in that way. I think it gives you the ammunition to do that. I'm not sure if a brand, if you don't have as big of a brand as Universal, if it would work to do a monetize your friends and family night in this way, but it doesn't mean you can't try it. And you might try it at a much more reasonable price point, or maybe you could invert it and say that you're going to do a half price tickets, but only to your biggest fans, that are subscribed to your newsletter, or, you might be able to invert it, as a way of rewarding super fans in a way. If you don't have a brand like this, I mean, to me, this really feels like a cash grab. I think it would be detrimental to smaller. If you had an independent facility and your normal ticket price is $20 and you charged $100 to show up on the dress rehearsal, I think that would not be. I don't think that would work. But I think you might take the concept of rewarding super fans and seeing if you can incorporate them into the dress rehearsal so they could kind of meet, even hang out with friends of the cast and whatnot. I think that could be powerful.
Yeah. I think I would do it as a content creator bonus to help generate early social media, early online presence, early content. I agree with you. But I think what's really important here to recognize is, over and above the fact that it shows Halloween is continuing to be more and more popular, I also think the reason they continue to get earlier and earlier is out of demand. Yeah. So if you're an independent haunt and you're not selling out every night, do not expand your operation. Do not expand your operational evenings. If you are fully selling out every single night, like Halloween Horror Nights, like Mickey's Not So Scary, then yes, absolutely, creep earlier and earlier and earlier. But if you aren't selling out, there is absolutely no point to dilute that across, to dilute your fan base across more nights, because that's just going to hurt your profit margin. So I think the real important thing is expand with demand, expand with because you have to, you have no choice. That's the recommendation I would give.
Okay. Well, our next story is not at all related to Halloween. So it's going to get back to the normal world here. We talked.
Meanwhile, back to our
regular show, right? We talked a while back about the concept of tourist bubbles and creating spaces where you need to be more accepting of other cultures if you want their tourism. We talked about that in the context of a few countries, but also Japan. And since then, more articles have come out about the backlash that's getting even stronger, actually, now during the summer about in Japan. But this story is not in Japan. It's just related to that concept. But the first gender inclusive wave pool in Saudi Arabia is now open. And a quote here from the press release says that Cyan Water Park proudly stands as the first water park in the kingdom to offer an inclusive in-water experience, welcoming men, women, and children together in a wave pool, ADG said in the press release. The document continues that, supported by both government and local community, this change has assisted in promoting tourism. Although there has been a mix of opinions from visitors, the majority have been very positive. So it sounds similar, I think, to what we talk about, where you're always going to have that pushback, but kind of carving out a place where the cultural lines are a little more lenient, can help with tourism. But Scott, as someone who has worked nearby, what is your perspective on this?
Well, I think this is proof that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is serious about expanding their tourism base. I think it shows that they are willing to not only create environments like this, but also to show the world that they are not nearly as rigid and harsh as so many people believe that they are. The other thing that I find interesting about this is, just to put this into perspective, keep in mind that women could not legally drive automobiles until 2016. So this is a gigantic step forward. It may seem like, it may seem like, well, okay, yeah, they're letting men and women in a wave pool, big deal. But it is a big deal. This is like, going back to the times of desegregation here in the United States, of allowing people with different ethnic backgrounds into the same pool. Yeah. We wouldn't even think that was an issue today, but
and that wasn't that long ago either.
It wasn't that long ago either. That's true. But this is of that magnitude. And I think it's important to recognize that. And again, from our point of view as attractions professionals, I think this, beyond any shadow of a doubt, proves that KSA, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, is serious. Mm-hmm. They're in it to win it. They're willing to I won't say soften their rules, but create, as Philip was saying, that tourist bubble, so that they don't have to. They're not asking people to change their beliefs. You are not required to go into this wave pool, but they are offering it so that people who do not have the same segregation of men and women as part of their faith, they can come to Saudi Arabia and have an amazing time. And I will say the amount of work that's happening in Saudi is overwhelming. It is, it's really breathtaking. And I've, even though I've done one project there, I have received in the past probably 2 weeks, I have received two RFPs, two requests for proposals to do additional work there. And so they're serious. GIA is a large organization, and they are putting their money where their mouth is, and they're moving things quickly so that people around the world can recognize that Saudi Arabia, whether it be Riyadh or Jeddah or wherever, is a valid place to consider, especially for European tourists, because for us in the U.S. it's a heck of a flight. Trust me, I've done it a couple times. But for people closer by, it is certainly a viable option. And I will tell you that when I was there working and when I was there watching other people from other expats from outside the country or other tourists from outside the country, the Saudi people were very kind, treated us all beautifully. And so I think that this is certainly something to keep an eye on when it comes to a brand new, or not brand new, but certainly majorly expanding tourism base. So keep an eye on it.
That was actually my as well biggest takeaway. Just that it, well, we hear a lot about the work going to the area, and we always wonder how much of it's going to materialize. Things like this, I think, really show they're willing to do the hard work of making an area, amenable to tourism, because it's a big hurdle, I think, for attracting international guests, is really just understanding how to, how lenient to be with the culture. I mean, that's something I think we could work on. I've said multiple times in America, of just, not even having, bilingual signage in our airport. Is some things like that really are big pieces of this. But
yeah, and I think that it's easy for a country that has as much wealth as Saudi Arabia or UAE or whatever. It's easy for them to build the things. The challenging thing is to create a culture where people who aren't necessarily in line with their religious or political beliefs feel comfortable to come. That's the hard part. And to me, this is a gigantic step forward for Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Okay. All right, moving on. We're going to move back over to the U.S. We're going to talk about a new event happening in Las Vegas, inspired by Hasbro's Lite-Brite. Hasbro and Secret Location, a Toronto-based Emmy Award-winning content studio, have partnered to launch Lite-Brite Worlds of Wonder, an all-new immersive show at the Illuminarium Las Vegas. The 60-minute experience combines the nostalgic delight of Lite-Brite with cutting technology designed to inspire childlike wonder, creativity, and fun for kids and adults alike. And it's a 60-minute cinematic interactive show with 12 activations in a digital play space, retail, cinematic worlds, and hosts that host it, whatnot. So it already launched. It launched last week. So there's starting to be a little bit more information out about it. And the pictures look pretty cool. I mean, this looks like a pretty fun experience. And it just reminds me, a few things we talked a long while back about, Scott saying how the nostalgia brands were kind of coming back and Hasbro's move. But it reminds me overall of how much more brands are looking to do real life experiences. I mean, we've talked about that for a few years. And I think we've seen them go up and down as interest comes and goes. But stuff like this, this is semi-related, but not a new story we're talking about, but just related is, something like the Lionsgate studio is partnering with a haunted house production team to put together a haunted house for Midsummer Scream. So, I mean, just these little things about these brands looking at creating experiences, I think we're seeing it more and more. And I think it used to be relegated to the convention stuff. And now it's creeping out into more sustainable activations, I think.
Well, so Philip, have you experienced Illuminarium in Vegas
No,
before?
I haven't. Mm-mm.
So the thing I like about this particular story is I think this is exactly the right direction for Illuminarium to go. The fact that, not only are they bringing in a known brand and a retro brand that appeals to a multiple generations, quite honestly. It's also providing a little bit more structure. When I did Illuminarium, I can't even say it now. When I did Illuminarium in the past, it lacked structure. It was technologically beautiful. It was amazing, but there wasn't as much actually to do as in my opinion, the price tag said you should be able to do. So by including interactive spaces, by including a storyline narrative, to me it provides some structure that was lacking from the previous Illuminarium experience that I had, and doing it with a brand like Lite-Brite just makes total sense. When I first read it, I was like, well, that's weird, because you've got high-tech projection doing low-tech pixelated Lite-Brite, and then you see some of the images and you're like, oh no, this works beautifully. This is gorgeous. And it ties into a name that certainly a large swath of the population in the US recognize as Lite-Brite and Hasbro. And it makes it also more family friendly, and more, I don't even want to say kid friendly, because there are plenty of grown-ups who enjoyed playing with their Lite-Brite. I was one of them. And so, taking plastic pegs and sticking them through black construction paper, it's a memory that a certain generation has. And I think this is just the next generation to help not only the Lite-Brite brand, but also help the Illuminarium brand. So I think this could be a very wise move, and I would love to see this. This is very
I didn't
exciting.
think about that lack of structure, but now that I can see that, because to me, I think Illuminarium, well, I had not been Illuminarium, but it seemed to me to be similar to the Team Lab experiences in Japan, or, where you have something that's like projection map, like they're leading with projection mapping, they're leading with pixel type of stuff. And I can see how, if you're not providing a direction for the guest or a way to interact, then just kind of, it's almost like a museum, basically, and so I can see how adding a narrative into it, or at least adding something interactive or a through line to it, giving it structure, would really improve the experience.
Absolutely. And it's basically what it does is for, in my opinion, the Illuminarium, see, I still can't say it. The Illuminarium experience, that I had, was leading with technology. It was beautiful technology. It was wonderfully done. It was incredibly rendered, but it lacked structure and focus. And it sounds like this is going to solve a lot of those problems.
Yeah, well, hopefully one of us will get to see it one day.
Yep.
If Scott can figure out how to get there.
I can't order an Uber now because I won't be able to say, I need to go to Illuminarium.
They'll know. Happens all the time. Okay.
They always know.
So, all right. So our next story, Disney Dreams That Soar. The drone show is now open at Disney Springs in Orlando. Let's see. This is 800 drones that fly through the air during a 10-minute show, which Walt Disney World Resort visitors can enjoy for limited time, this summer. Disney Springs doesn't charge admission, and Disney Dreams That Soar is a great choice for guests looking for free things to do at Disney World. So that's the gist of it. I would recommend someone go watch a video, because it's one of those things where, it doesn't, I'm not sure to me, it didn't sound that exciting, but then you see it and you're like, wow, this is great. It really is what we've been talking about, where as the technology for drones advances, what they're able to create in the sky is really so much more durable, or I don't want to say, I think just, we talked about the whole fireworks thing before, and so I don't want to say this is like a replacement for fireworks, but I think this is a good augmentation to these things, because it can be done every night, and there's less cost you're shooting fireworks up, they're consuming, they're gone, whatnot. It's very expensive to do fireworks. So this is something you can do in different sized spaces with different safety regulations, where you're not having to worry about the ash and hose stuff down, and it can be repeated. And also, we've already heard reports. Obviously, this opened almost 2 weeks ago, and we've heard reports already that it's making Disney Springs absolutely packed with people for this, which should be no surprise, because it's like anything free at Disney, and just the people swarm in.
So I can confirm those reports because I've seen it, and I actually went over while I was doing work for SeaWorld, putting in their new sea lion and otter presentation, and it is the best thing that has happened to Disney Springs. Now, am I going to sit here and say it's the most incredible Disney produced sky show? No, I'm not going to say that. However, I will say it is the best one I ever have seen without having to buy a ticket for anything. And I will also say that because of the nature of drones, obviously they are susceptible, just like fireworks to a certain extent, but they are susceptible to wind and weather. And in doing something that relies on 800 drones, they have handled it in such an intelligent way from my perspective. First off, let's talk about the show first, and then we'll talk about the ramifications for Disney Springs, because it's huge. That's the huge part. But from the show itself, the reason that they're testing it here is, from what I've heard anecdotally, is that this way they can test it so that they won't have guests be upset if it goes down because of wind or weather or whatever.
Season, right?
Hurricane season, they all blow. They end up in Lake Buena Vista. They end up 2 towns over. Look, it's Winter Haven. But the idea here is they have created what I think is a beautiful show. They have handled a lot of the challenges that I think drone shows have, and that is that most drone shows that I've seen prior to this are just so incredibly slow moving that there's nothing exciting about them. But what this show does is they've changed that dynamic, because they actually take all the drones, fly them up into the sky, and then through programming zip the light around in circles, and it's incredible. There's one whole section that's Guardians of the Galaxy that is basically just a suspended rectangle that has shadows of the characters dancing in front of it. So it's a dance party that's all done in shadow, in negative space. Super cool.
Yeah.
Really, really fun. So now let's talk about the operations here at Disney Springs, because it has made Disney Springs busier than I have ever seen it. The restaurants are packed. The shops are packed. And what's happening is, because they do 2 shows, or when I went, they were doing 2 shows a night. The 9:00 show, I got there at 8:00. I pulled into the orange garage. I was sent. So they enter everybody who wants to stand along the water, which is the basic place to view it. They enter everybody in one location. If you know Disney Springs, it's between Cirque and House of Blues. Okay. So everybody enters there, and you fill in all along the waterway, all the way back down to the balloon ride. And the only exit is through the balloon ride, or next to the balloon ride. So it's one way in, one way out, so they can then clean up and get the next group in. The restaurants on the water side were filled, packed to the gills. 2 of them even had their patios were a $35 per person cover charge to sit on the patio and enjoy food and watch the drone show. So it is already generating revenue for the restaurants who happen to be lucky enough to be between Cirque and the balloon in that area. As you exit, it's fascinating to me, because they literally have so many operations people there telling you, if you want to continue to enjoy your night, please go to the left as you exit, which takes you back through the old and back towards the boathouse and on all that side. And if you're going to exit, they send you straight back to the garage. So they really, for 9 minutes, You do have to get there at least an hour before it starts. If you want to have some sort of decent seating. I will say that if you plan to go in, or not even seating, standing room, I will say that if you are planning to go, there is no bad angle for it in that space between one and the other. If you're like me and want to get out ahead of the crowd, head all the way down to the balloon. Don't stop and linger thinking, oh, this is going to be the best spot. It's not, it doesn't matter. Because one of the things they've done with the drones is they actually, instead of doing a whole bunch of two-dimensional stuff, the majority of it is three-dimensional and it will turn. So, like, for example, when the up house appears, the up house floats up and then it turns so you actually get a three-dimensional experience of that. One other thing that I think is really super cool about the show, and that is instead of having it be dark and then all of a sudden all the drones turn on and it's this moment, the music starts slow and you see them fly out and sort of twinkle like stars floating out over the water. And it's a perfect location because it's still difficult to fly drones over humans because they still drop out. So flying out over the water, you just see them kind of go in and take their places, and then it goes dark and then the show starts. So it's really quite a magical show, and I strongly recommend it. Boy, have I rambled on because we are sorry, we are way over time.
Drone show.
I thought it was a great drone show. Let me put it this way. It's the best free drone show I've ever seen. And it's a great way to bring people to Disney Springs and reinvigorate that like they've been trying to do for so many years with different attractions there. So hopefully we have reinvigorated your love of the theme park and attraction industry for this week. We will be back again next week. Until next time, on behalf of Philip Hernandez and myself, Scott Swenson, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30, and we will see you in a week.